Stop right there! The pen froze mid-air. Every head in the adoption centre turned, and when Richard Jefferson, the billionaire, lifted his eyes, he saw her, Nancy Cooper, the ex-wife he hadn't seen in 6 years. She stood in the doorway, calm, but her voice cut through the room. "Before you sign those adoption papers, Richard," she said, stepping aside, "you might want to meet your real children first." 3 little boys walked in behind her, and every single one looked exactly like him. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The rain outside Horizon Adoption Agency came down in soft silver ribbons, streaking across the glass windows of the black Bentley as it pulled into the private parking bay. Cameras flashed from a distance, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. Inside, Richard Jefferson adjusted his tie and gave that signature half-smile the tabloids called billionaire charm. It wasn't real. None of this was. Beside him, Marie R. Doran, America's favorite runway angel turned fiancé, leaned close and whispered, "Remember to smile when we walk in? This isn't a boardroom." He exhaled through his nose. "Trust me, Marie. I built boardrooms. I can handle an interview about adoption." But she caught something under that confidence, a flicker of hesitation. Not fear, but guilt. The kind that comes from knowing you're trying to buy redemption. Today wasn't about children, it was about image. After the scandal last fall, when leaked footage showed Richard firing an employee on camera and calling him replaceable, his PR team needed a miracle. Adopting a child was the miracle. A photo op. A smile for the cameras that said, "He's human, after all." Marie, dressed in a white trench coat and oversized sunglasses, played the part perfectly. The soft-hearted model who tamed the ruthless billionaire. Their story was trending again. Power couple gives hope to orphans. The cameras would eat it up. Inside the Horizon building, everything smelled like lemon polish and money, soft lighting, expensive art on the walls, the kind of place that made charity look like luxury. "Mr. Jefferson." "Miss Doran," said the agency director, Mrs. Granger, her tone somewhere between reverence and calculation. "We're honored to assist you. The media's waiting for your statement outside, but we'll handle that later. For now, let's discuss the process." They followed her into a glass office overlooking the city. Richard's reflection looked back at him. Sharp suit, colder eyes. Mrs. Granger smiled. "You'll be the talk of the town again, sir. In a good way this time." Marie touched Richard's hand lightly. "We're not doing this for headlines, Mrs. Granger. We just want to give a child a home." The director nodded. She didn't believe it, but she appreciated the performance. Richard's gaze drifted to a file on the table, labeled Horizon Adoption Private Files. He reached for it, but before he could, the glass door opened, and the world stopped. "Stop right there." The voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It was the kind that carried, calm, certain. Every head turned toward the doorway. Nancy Cooper stood there, framed by the rain-slicked light behind her. She wore a plain navy dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup, just the quiet, natural confidence of a woman who'd lived through storms and learned not to flinch. Marie blinked. She didn't recognize her, but Richard did. "Nancy?" His voice cracked the way glass does under pressure. It had been 6 years since he'd last seen her, 6 years since their divorce, the one he justified with words like irreconcilable and necessary for growth. But now she was here, and she wasn't alone. 3 boys stood behind her, shoulder to shoulder like a small army in hand-me-down coats. Each of them with the same dark hair, the same sharp jawline, and the same storm-grey eyes that Richard Jefferson saw in his mirror every morning. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Nancy said it. "Before you sign those adoption papers, Richard, maybe meet your real sons first." Marie froze. Her perfect smile fractured. Mrs. Granger looked between them in confusion. "Mr. Jefferson, do you know this woman?" But Richard didn't answer. He couldn't. His heart was pounding so hard, it drowned out the noise of the rain. Nancy walked forward slowly, her hand on the smallest boy's shoulder. "This is James," she said quietly. "And this," she motioned to the others, "is David and Henry." Richard's lips parted, but no sound came. His gaze flicked from one boy to the next. James, serious and quiet. David, with a dimple that mirrored his own. Henry, looking right at him with open curiosity. It felt like staring at 3 mirrors of the past he thought he'd buried. Marie swallowed, her tone sharp under her sugar-coated voice. "This must be some kind of mistake. Richard, tell her." But Richard didn't. He was still staring at the children. Nancy crossed her arms. "No mistake, just unfinished business." Mrs. Granger's eyes darted nervously. "Mrs. Cooper, this is a private appointment." "Then call security," Nancy interrupted. "But before they get here, maybe someone should check the DNA on those files you're keeping." The room fell silent. Marie's eyes flicked to the adoption form on the table, then to the agency's open laptop beside it. The screen blinked with a pending notification. Paternity match alert. Subject R. Jefferson. Nancy's timing was perfect. Marie's breath caught. She reached for the laptop, casually closing the screen before anyone noticed. She smiled, tight and cold. "I think this conversation is over." Nancy's expression didn't change. "You think because you've got his ring on your finger and a camera waiting outside, you can rewrite history?" Marie's eyes hardened. History left when he did. Richard finally stepped forward. His voice, deep but shaking slightly, broke through the air. "Enough, both of you!" But Nancy didn't back down. "You walked away, Richard. I didn't chase you. I didn't ask for your money. I raised your sons without a dime from you. But today—" She looked around the sterile, polished office, the cameras waiting beyond the glass. "Today I realized my boys might see your face on TV smiling about saving a child while you've never met your own." The staff was frozen. Mrs. Granger whispered something into her headset. 2 guards appeared by the door, unsure of what to do. Nancy took a step closer, lowering her voice. "I didn't come here for money. I came here to make sure they know the truth, because someday they'll ask why they don't have a father, and I won't lie to them." Richard looked down. His throat tightened. Marie slid between them, her tone defensive. "You're using those boys to humiliate him?" Nancy met her gaze coolly. "If humiliation is what's left after truth shows up, then maybe he earned it." Marie's jaw clenched. "This is pathetic." Nancy gave a faint, humorless smile. "You're right, it is. But so is adopting someone else's child while pretending you didn't abandon your own." The tension was suffocating. Mrs. Granger finally stepped in. "Mrs. Cooper, we'll have to ask you to leave." Nancy nodded. "I was leaving anyway." She turned toward the door. The boys followed silently, their small hands linked. But as they passed, Richard, Henry, the youngest, looked up at him and said softly, "Mum, that man looks like me." Nancy's breath caught. Richard's heart did too. For a brief second, their eyes met. And everything, the money, the image, the PR stunt, collapsed under one truth he couldn't outrun. After they left, the room stayed silent for a long time. Marie finally broke it, her voice cold, controlled. "We continue with the adoption." Mrs. Granger hesitated. "Miss Doran, there are procedures." "At that alert—" "I'll handle it," Marie interrupted, sliding the closed laptop toward her purse. "You'll see no issue on your end." She turned to Richard. "Don't let her mess with your head. That woman thrives on drama." But Richard wasn't listening. His eyes were still on the door where Nancy had disappeared. "Marie," he said quietly, "those boys are not your problem," she cut in. "They're her weapon. You've built empires, Richard. Don't let some bitter ex drag you down." He didn't answer. He just kept staring at the reflection of his face in the glass, and how much it looked like the boys who had just walked out. Hours later, as the agency lights dimmed and the rain eased, Marie sat alone in the waiting room, typing on her phone. The screen lit up with a notification. Confidential. DNA test complete. Paternity, positive match, 99.9%. Marie's jaw tightened. Without hesitation, she deleted the file and wiped the system log. She stared at her reflection in the black screen, her lipstick perfect, her eyes empty. She whispered to herself, "I knew this day was coming." Then she smiled, a sharp, unbreakable smile, and looked toward the door where Richard had gone. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. The morning after Nancy's storming entrance at Horizon, Marie R. Doran woke in the penthouse overlooking Manhattan, sunlight hitting the glass walls and glinting off her Rolex. Everything looked perfect, the life she'd meticulously built with Richard Jefferson, but her reflection in the mirror told another story. Her lips were flawless, her hair still perfect from last night's PR shoot, but her eyes betrayed panic. Because she'd known. Years ago, when she first became Richard's fiancée, she had heard whispers. Nancy Cooper had been pregnant. The rumors had surfaced during a charity gala where the staff whispered about Nancy vanishing mysteriously with a lawyer's help. Marie had never stopped them. She had gone further, paid off a housekeeper, intercepted old letters, shredded the evidence. Every single piece of proof that Nancy's children existed had been buried. Until yesterday, her phone buzzed. A dozen notifications flooded her feed. Richard Jefferson's secret heirs exposed. Billionaire's ex-wife drops bombshell. Who are Richard Jefferson's real sons? Marie's hand shook slightly as she swiped through. The world had learned the truth before she had a chance to stop it. Meanwhile, Richard sat in his office, staring at his reflection in the black glass of the skyscraper's window. Manhattan's skyline stretched endlessly below, but none of it felt real. He kept replaying the moment at Horizon. Nancy, standing in the doorway, her calm voice, the three boys, James, David, Henry. He should have felt anger, shock, confusion, but all he felt was a strange, hollow recognition. The paternity confirmation had come in overnight, quietly, behind the staff's eyes. DNA matched, no question. He didn't tell Marie, not yet, not ever. Instead, he had gone to the coffee shop near Horizon. He ordered black coffee, sat by the window, and watched the city carry on, unaware that beneath its glittering surface, his life had shattered. Marie, sensing hesitation, barged into his office mid-morning, heels clicking against the marble floor. "Richard, we need a statement," she snapped, her voice sharp, professional, rehearsed. "The press is calling. Social media is trending. We need a narrative before this blows up." Richard didn't look at her. "They already know everything, Marie." "Not everything," she hissed, stepping closer. "We control what they see. You need to say that the adoption is legitimate, that—" "Stop," he said finally, voice low and steady. He turned, locking eyes with her. "You knew this day was coming too, didn't you?" Marie's perfect composure faltered for a fraction of a second before she masked it with a smile. I handled it like I always do." Richard raised a brow. "Handled it? Or buried it until it exploded?" She froze. That one word, exploded, slid past her defenses. Elsewhere, Nancy Cooper was already in motion. She hadn't come to Manhattan for revenge. She hadn't come to humiliate Marie. She came to protect her children. She rented a small loft near Horizon, keeping a low profile. But reporters had already found photos of the boys. Social media was alive with speculation. Are these Richard Jefferson's sons? Billionaire caught in secret family scandal. Who is Nancy Cooper? Nancy didn't respond. She let the truth speak for itself. But she had her allies. The lawyers who had helped her vanish all those years ago were quietly reviewing Richard's old divorce paperwork. And what they found, the divorce had never been finalized. Legally, Nancy Cooper was still Mrs. Jefferson. The revelation hit Marie like a punch to the gut. Her phone vibrated incessantly. Emails, texts, urgent calls. Her carefully constructed empire, built on influence and social capital, began to tremble. Every magazine editor, every PR assistant, Every social media influencer seemed to smell weakness. Her private messages to journalists, promises of exclusives and staged interviews were suddenly irrelevant. The world had already picked sides. At the Jefferson penthouse, Richard and Marie sat across from each other in tense silence. She tried again, softening her tone. "Richard, we can fix this. We can spin it. Make it look like—" "No," he interrupted, finally meeting her eyes. "I can't pretend anymore. They're my children, not some press stunt, not some headline." Marie's shoulders tensed. "Children? You're talking about 3 kids you never knew existed? How do you even plan to handle that?" Richard's jaw tightened. "I don't know, but I do know this. I can't bury them. Not like we buried Nancy's letters, not like we buried the truth." Marie's hand hovered over her phone, a gesture that could have been calm or deadly. "So what? You just hand your company over to your estranged ex-wife and 3 unknown kids?" Richard shook his head. "No, but I have to be honest. And right now, you're standing in the way of that." Marie's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm the problem? Try the internet." He didn't respond. His mind drifted to James, David, Henry, their small hands, the steel grey eyes, the innocence that mirrored his own. He had missed 6 years of that. He could never get that back. By mid-afternoon, Horizon Adoption Agency had become a media circus. Helicopters hovered, live streams broadcasted the empty hallway outside the office, and reporters pressed their lenses against the glass. Nancy, still calm, watched from a distance with the triplets safely hidden behind her. She refused interviews, refused attention. All she wanted was to shield them. But she knew the world wouldn't stop. Not now. Not with Marie plotting every move to contain the narrative. Meanwhile, Marie whispered into her earpiece, "Stage the cameras, stop any leaks. No one outside that building sees anything until we control it." The agency director, Mrs. Granger, was caught in the middle. She cleared her throat. "Miss Doran, the DNA alert," Marie waved her off. "Handled." Richard stayed silent, but inside a storm was brewing. He couldn't ignore the truth any longer, and for the first time in years, money meant nothing. All that mattered were the 3 small boys he had never held, never kissed goodnight, never watched grow. And one thing was clear. Nothing, no empire, no image, no social control, would ever matter more than them. By nightfall, the city lights glittered across the skyline. Richard paced the penthouse, thinking of James, David, and Henry. He imagined their laughter, their tears, the first time he could finally call them his own. Marie sat silently on the couch, phone in hand, carefully wiping any digital trace of the DNA alert. She was perfect, calculating, cold. But Richard knew the game had changed. Nancy Cooper wasn't just a ghost from the past anymore. She was the key to the future. And the future was already calling his name. Richard Jefferson paced the mahogany floors of his corner office, overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. Rain streaked the glass again, a mirrored echo of the chaos that had erupted in his life over the last 48 hours. Emails, calls, and frantic texts had poured in non-stop since Nancy Cooper's unexpected appearance at Horizon Adoption Agency, but this storm wasn't just personal anymore, it was corporate. He opened the secure company terminal. The numbers on the screen didn't lie. Shares had been moving, millions of dollars worth, siphoned to a rival corporation. Richard scowled, his gut churned. He had always trusted Marie R. Doran, his glamorous fiancée, to manage the public side of his life, the image, the headlines, the PR. But she had access to everything. She could manipulate every board report. And now he feared the worst. A deeper dive into the transaction logs confirmed it. Marie R. Doran, unauthorized transfer of coal industry shares to Carver and Lynn, rival conglomerate. Richard's jaw tightened, betrayal cut sharper than any boardroom cut he'd ever suffered. He stormed into Marie's apartment penthouse mid-morning. The soft hum of Manhattan below was drowned out by the tension in the air. Marie sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, laptop balanced on her knees, a faint, smug smile on her lips. "You knew I'd find out," she said, before he could speak. You always do. Richard slammed the door. Don't act innocent. You've been selling shares behind my back. Millions are gone, Marie. Her smile didn't waver. It's not personal, Richard. I'm just securing our future. Our future? He laughed bitterly. Do you even hear yourself? She leaned back, as if rehearsed for this moment 1,000 times. I married you for stability, Richard. Your name, your empire. You weren't ever mine, but I can play the game. Richard's anger boiled, but his mind kept returning to something else, the silent investor behind Carver and Lynn, Nancy Cooper. The discovery hit him like a thunderclap. Nancy had been quietly moving pieces in the background all these years, not for revenge, not for publicity, but to protect her sons, to secure their future from the shadow of Richard's empire. It wasn't malicious, it was maternal strategy. Richard leaned against his desk, chest heaving. She's been playing a long game. Marie's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Your rival, he said quietly. The one you've been transferring shares to? Nancy's behind it. She's been protecting her children, my children. Marie's composure flickered. Children? What are you talking about? Richard's hands clenched. James, David, Henry. Your PR stunt isn't the only game in play. She's been building them a future under my shadow, and now... He pulled a yellowed envelope from the top drawer of his desk. Dad's will surfaced. Only my bloodline can inherit coal industries. That makes them the true heirs. Marie's mouth opened, then closed. A flicker of panic crossed her otherwise perfect mask. Richard continued, voice low and heavy. You thought this was a game of headlines and social media control, but now it's real. Those boys aren't a scandal anymore. They're the only reason coal industries survives as our family legacy. Marie's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone, her usual calm precision failing her. You can't just... What do you mean? Only bloodline? That's illegal. Richard cut her off. It's legal. My father drafted it long before I existed, and long before any of this mess with you. Only the true heirs get full control. Marie's mind raced. Her meticulously built world, her climb into wealth and influence, was crumbling. Every move she had made to control Richard, to manipulate his empire, was about to be nullified. Across town, Nancy Cooper sat at a small cafe, James and David on either side, Henry tucked in a stroller. The city roared around them, but she was calm, collected, a master of silent strategy. Her phone buzzed, a lawyer's message. Richard has discovered your silent investment. He knows about the will. She smiled faintly. Then the time has come. Nancy didn't want Richard to fear her. She didn't want him to fight her. But she wanted him to understand the stakes. His sons' lives were now intertwined with his empire. This was bigger than money, bigger than pride, bigger than any headline. Meanwhile, Marie returned to her penthouse, pacing the marble floors. She called one of her most trusted PR operatives. Control the narrative, she instructed, voice icy. Spin it before it leaks to the media. If Richard finds out about the will, we lose everything, everything. She hung up and sank into her velvet sofa. For the first time in years, Marie felt powerless, and that panic, that rare vulnerability, fueled a deeper rage. She wasn't going to lose, not to a woman she never cared for, not to children she had no control over. But Richard, haunted and humbled, was already thinking beyond revenge, beyond corporate warfare. His eyes softened as he imagined James, David, and Henry. Their small hands, the soft laughter echoing through the halls of Horizon, their storm-grey eyes filled with hope. Richard knew what he had to do. That night, in the quiet of his office, he called the lawyer who handled Nancy's past settlement. "We need to bring her in. Carefully," he said. "I want to meet my sons, alone, and I want Marie out of the picture." The lawyer's reply was calm but firm. "Mr. Jefferson, you're treading on legal and social landmines, but if your goal is the children, we can make it happen. Carefully, yes, discreetly." Richard's jaw tightened. Careful is fine. But nothing is more important than them. Nothing. He hung up and stared at the skyline again, the city lights shimmering like tiny sparks of destiny. James, David, Henry weren't just children who had appeared out of nowhere. They were the key to his legacy, the living proof that money, power, and ambition meant nothing without family. And he was finally ready to face them. In the shadows of Manhattan, Marie sat in silence, plotting her next move. She had lost control, but she hadn't lost yet. Her eyes lingered on the framed photo of her and Richard at a gala, their smiles frozen in perfection. She whispered to herself, almost a mantra. If they think this ends with her and her children, they're dead wrong. Because the real game, the one she had built her empire on, was only just beginning. The Jefferson family's world had shifted in ways Richard could never have imagined. It was a quiet evening at Horizon Adoption Agency when Henry, the youngest of the triplets, suddenly clutched his chest, collapsing onto the polished wooden floor. Panic swept through the room like wildfire. Nancy Cooper dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling but precise as she lifted him gently. James and David screamed for help, their storm-grey eyes wide with terror. Richard Jefferson, who had arrived moments earlier to speak with Nancy, froze. Time seemed to slow, and all the corporate battles, the betrayals, the PR nightmares, faded. There was only Henry. The ambulance arrived in minutes that felt like hours. At the hospital, tests revealed a shocking truth. Henry had a rare congenital heart condition. The only perfect donor match? Richard Jefferson himself. The irony wasn't lost on him. The billionaire who had once buried the past, refused to confront mistakes, and shielded himself from accountability, now faced a literal heartbeat that belonged to him. Nancy watched him as he absorbed the news. Her calm presence, her steady voice, cut through the panic. Henry needs you, Richard. No one else can save him. Richard swallowed, his corporate armor stripped away in a single heartbeat. The room felt smaller, the city lights outside distant and irrelevant. He had no choice. He had to give part of himself to save what truly mattered. Meanwhile, Marie R. Doran was already executing her final, desperate plan. Her office was a whirlwind of data screens and calls to journalists. Every social media platform, every gossip columnist, every live feed, she wanted to destroy Nancy Cooper's reputation before the world learned the truth. She smiled coldly as she typed a carefully worded, exclusive leak. Billionaire's ex-wife emerges after years of silence. What is she hiding? But Marie hadn't counted on one thing. The past she had tried to bury was fighting back. Within hours, her leak backfired spectacularly. Journalists dug deeper, uncovering the secret Nancy had carried for years. Nancy Cooper had been paid off by Richard's own lawyer to disappear. She was led to believe that Richard didn't want the children, that he had no knowledge of their existence. The world saw it in vivid headlines. Billionaire's lawyer paid ex-wife to disappear. Children hidden for years. The real betrayal. Who really deceived Richard Jefferson? Marie R. Doran's PR stunt fails. Truth about Jefferson's children emerges. Richard sat in the hospital waiting room, eyes fixed on Henry's tiny form in the operating theatre. When Nancy approached, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder, he didn't flinch. He didn't even look at her. Instead, he whispered to himself, "I failed them once. Never again." The operating room doors opened hours later. Henry was stable. Richard had donated, risking his own health in a procedure that left him exhausted, but alive with clarity. Nancy smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her son's forehead. "Your family now," she said softly, voice carrying the weight of years. "All three of them. They have you whether you realize it or not." Richard swallowed hard, his eyes drifting to James and David, who had been pacing anxiously. I don't deserve this," he admitted. Nancy shook her head. "No one deserves family. You fight for it. You earn it." Meanwhile, Marie's empire was crumbling. The public backlash was swift and merciless. Every magazine, every social outlet, every news headline portrayed her as the manipulative fiancée who tried to destroy Nancy Cooper and suppress the billionaire's own children. She watched it all from her high-rise apartment, champagne untouched, phone buzzing incessantly. Anger surged through her veins, but for the first time her control had evaporated. Richard, in contrast, found a strange peace. The corporate battles, the media circus, they seemed distant now. What mattered was real, raw, undeniable. His sons, James, David, Henry, 3 living reminders that bloodlines, love, and responsibility could never be replaced by money or power. Nancy leaned close to him, voice low. "They're yours, Richard. Always have been, and now the world knows." He nodded. The weight of the revelation pressed down on him, but beneath it, a strange sense of liberation grew. The truth was finally out. The children were safe, and the betrayal of the past had been exposed. As the night stretched on, Richard stared out at Manhattan's glittering lights. Marie's empire was imploding. Nancy's quiet plan had prevailed, and his sons, his real legacy, lay asleep in the hospital, safe. He whispered to the city that had never mattered as much as it did tonight. Nothing. Not wealth, not power, not fame. Nothing will ever mean more than this. And for the first time, Richard Jefferson felt something he hadn't felt in years, complete and unshakable purpose. The city was buzzing, social media feeds lit up, tabloids screamed, and late-night news outlets replayed every detail of the Jefferson family scandal. Marie R. Doran, once the golden girl of high fashion and elite Manhattan society, had become a cautionary tale overnight. It all began with her desperate attempt to smear Nancy Cooper. Marie had thought she could control the narrative, bury the truth, and cement her place by Richard's side. But the investigation into her exclusive leak revealed a darker truth. Faked infertility records, forged modeling contracts and credentials. Every magazine cover she had ever posed for, every runway appearance, even her so-called philanthropic accolades, all of it was exposed as fabrication. Brands severed ties immediately. Contracts worth millions vanished. Sponsors pulled sponsorships. Influencers and PR agencies abandoned her like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Marie watched it all unfold from the corner of her now empty penthouse. The lights of Manhattan flickered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glittering like a city celebrating her downfall. She sank into the velvet sofa, the room silent except for the incessant hum of her phone notifications, each ping a nail in her empire's coffin. She left the apartment the next morning, sunglasses hiding eyes red from sleepless nights and silent tears. She drove past Richard Jefferson's mansion, the sprawling estate where Nancy Cooper now tended to the triplets, James, David, and Henry, running barefoot through the manicured gardens, laughter echoing in the crisp morning air. Marie stopped the car. From behind the tinted glass, she watched Richard kneel, talking softly to the boys, holding James's small hand, brushing dirt from Henry's hair, lifting David onto his shoulders. It was a picture-perfect moment, filled with warmth and unshakable reality. Her lips quivered. For a split second she imagined herself in that role, a mother, a wife, a partner in Richard's legacy. But the truth hit her like a hammer. It was supposed to be me. She whispered it to herself, barely audible over the traffic below. Her figure slipped through the gates of the city she once ruled, lost among the bustling crowds, a ghost of her former power. Paparazzi flashed outside the Jefferson estate, but she didn't turn. She didn't want the world to see her broken. She just disappeared. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Nancy Cooper and Richard Jefferson shared a quiet moment. The chaos outside, the media frenzy, even Marie's fall. It all faded behind the walls of the home, now alive with family. Richard watched the triplets chase each other around the living room, their storm-grey eyes bright, laughter spilling into every corner. He finally understood what true legacy meant. Not wealth, not power, not control, but family, love, and bloodlines unbroken by betrayal. Nancy smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from Richard's face. "They're happy," she said softly. Richard nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "They're ours," he said, more to himself than to her. They've always been ours, and this feels right. Outside, Marie R. Doran disappeared into the city shadows, her empire shattered, her identity questioned, her ambition extinguished. But for Richard and Nancy, and for James, David, and Henry, the storm had passed, their bond had been tested, the secrets unveiled. But the family they had built from chaos now stood unbreakable, and in that moment, as the sun rose over Manhattan, it was clear. The true heirs had claimed their place, and nothing, not money, power, or lies, could take them away. Years had passed, Manhattan's skyline shimmered with new ambition, but coal industries had faltered under inexperienced leadership. The empire Richard Jefferson once commanded with an iron grip teetered on the edge of collapse. But all that was about to change. James, David, and Henry, now grown men, walked through the front doors of coal industries with Nancy Cooper at their side. The press swarmed the lobby, cameras flashing, reporters clamoring for a word. Headlines already circulated. The Sons of Blood and Silence take coal industries. Triplets restore billionaire's empire. Family legacy lives on. Richard, older, tempered by time and lessons learned, stood on the boardroom balcony, watching the moment unfold. His heart pounded, not with fear, not with ambition, but with pride and awe. The triplets moved with purpose, confidence that belied their age, a reflection of Nancy's quiet strength and Richard's legacy. Every decision, every strategic move showed the genius of youth guided by love and family. In the boardroom, the sons addressed the shareholders, their voices steady. "We are the heirs of this company, not because of money, not because of fame, but because legacy isn't bought," James said. "Legacy is earned, nurtured, and protected." David stepped forward, adding, "Our father built this empire, but we rebuild it for the people who matter most, our employees, our families, and the communities we serve." Henry, the youngest but no less commanding, concluded, "And we do it together with our mother, who showed us what strength really means." Richard's chest tightened. Years of arrogance, pride, and ambition had blinded him. He had chased acquisitions, deals, and status, thinking that power could replace what truly mattered. Now he understood his true inheritance had never been wealth, power, or influence. It had been them, James, David, Henry, his blood, his legacy. He descended the boardroom stairs, slowly, each step echoing in the vast hall. Nancy met his gaze, eyes warm, unshaken. "They did it?" she said softly. Richard nodded, voice hoarse with emotion. "They did." "And they did it with you." Nancy smiled. "We did it together." Outside, cameras captured the family walking through the streets of Manhattan. Richard, Nancy, and the triplets moved as one. No glitz, no staged appearances, just a family reunited, triumphant and whole. The press followed, the headlines still spinning, but this time the story wasn't about scandal or betrayal. It was about blood, courage, and redemption. Richard finally let himself breathe. No boardroom could teach him this. No deal could define him. It had taken decades, mistakes, and revelations, but he had learned what true legacy meant. Standing beside Nancy, watching his sons stride forward into the empire they now commanded, he whispered quietly, "More to himself than anyone else, I spent years trying to buy a legacy, when it was standing in front of me all along." The triplets looked up, smiles bright and unstoppable, storm-grey eyes gleaming like mirrors of their father's soul. Richard reached out, letting each of them take his hand. For the first time, the Jefferson legacy wasn't about business. It was about family. And it was unshakable. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.